Michelle Shepley. I'm here to talk to you today about your money. I've been in the finance industry for many years. For the last several years, I've worked in the mortgage division of a bank, and I deal with many young couples and older couples that are looking at their finances to make their next move. So I have a lot of experience with dealing with finances. Not only that, I was raised by accountants, and I learned many things in my youth as they were training us on how to handle our finances. And I've been married for almost 30 years. My husband and I own a small business, and I handle all the finances for the small business. So throughout that, we've made some mistakes and we've made some good choices, and I'd like to share what we've learned. So the first topic I'd like to talk to you about today is your credit. Have you sat down with your partner and talked about credit yet? If you haven't started those discussions yet, you should be. It's very important to know where each of you stand before you head into a long-term relationship. So make sure that you're telling the truth, you're sharing where your credit is right now, and if you don't know, that's when I would suggest to pull credit. And that's just so you can see where you're at, see where your score is, see where what you need to do to rectify any problems that may have happened in the past or are still going on. It will give you time to do that before you try to buy a home or make your next financial decisions. Let's talk about what liabilities you have, and by liabilities, your credit cards, your student loans, any loans that you have, car loans. You want to discuss this in detail so that everybody in the room understands what is going on with your finances. So with that, you'll start your discussions. If there's been any past issues, you're going to talk about those past issues and decide if they've been rectified, and if they haven't, how you are going to rectify those problems so that when you do make your next financial step, you're prepared. Whether you have a few credit cards or one and you just know that it's time to start concentrating on paying it down, let's talk about how we can do that relatively easily. So what I'd like you to do is take out all of your credit card bills and determine what the interest rate is on each credit card. It's very important that you line them up, the most expensive interest rate to the least expensive interest rate. And what you're going to do is you want to pay the one with the most expensive interest rate off first. So you're going to concentrate on that card. You want to pay that down as quickly as possible. Also, if you have good credit and you're getting offers for transferring funds to another credit card, it might be a good thing to do to transfer that money, but you have to double check the fees that are going to be involved. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at how much you're paying in interest per month, knowing that you can't pay that credit card off, and make sure that the fee to transfer to a 0% or a much lower percentage rate, how much that fee would be, make sure that it's not too much, that it will be better than the interest rate that you're currently paying on your current credit card. So you can do those items, and then what you could do is concentrate on paying one credit card down at a time, paying a little bit over the minimums on the rest of the credit cards until you get the one paid off. Once you are able to pay off one credit card, then you can concentrate that extra money that you've been putting into that one credit card onto the next. And you can go on and pay off that credit card until all your cards are paid off. It sounds a little complicated, but once you write it down and you're watching that balance go down on a monthly basis, you will see the results and keep going and paying off each credit card as you go. So if you don't know what your credit score is or what your history might look like, now's a good time to pull that credit. And what you can do, there's several services online. One of them is freecreditreport.com. Another one is creditkarma.com. There's several others that are online that you can pull in an annual report, and it will do that for you for free. So now might be a great time to pause and pull those credit reports. So hopefully now you've had a chance to pull your credit if you needed to, or at least discuss where you are both in your finances. Just remember one more thing. When you learned not to lie when you were a little kid, remember those times when you lied to your parents when it really wasn't that bad, but you lied to them about what you did and it made your punishment that much worse. Let's remember that when we're talking about our finances. It's better to get it out in the open right up front. So now we're going to move on to the next part of the plan. Who's going to handle your finances for the household? A marriage is really similar to running a business. You have a home, you have insurances, you have your finances, you have your everyday expenses, those kind of things. Who's going to handle all of that? Is it going to be a combined effort, or are you going to separate that? Talk to each other about who's better about finances. Usually, one person in the relationship is a stronger financial representative for the family. So if you can find that, it's a great way to start. And then that person will be in charge of the household account. If you decide to have separate accounts for daily expenses, that's great to do on a debit card. But the one thing that's always important is communication. You always want to make sure you're talking about where you're spending your money and making sure that you both agree on how it's being spent. So that's with your savings, with everything. Schedule an appointment. You don't have to make it business-like, but schedule time to review where you're at, whether it's on a monthly, a weekly, or maybe it's a quarterly basis. But it's important that you both sit down, look at your finances, and make sure you agree on where you're heading. So what's a good way to determine who should handle your finances? Let's talk about that. Let's have a really good, solid discussion about who's a saver, who's a spender. Maybe you're both savers, maybe you're both spenders, but you need to have those discussions. I remember when I first got married, we had determined long in advance the fact that my husband was a spender and I was a saver. So it was very easy for him to say, okay, I'm going to let you handle this because you're better at it. So it's not a definite role. You can always make changes going forward, but it's something you need to discuss right now. I can tell you things I've seen in the past where people have used the same credit or same checking account and they made a mistake. And one person was spending out of the checking account and so was the other person, and they ended up with fees that they really didn't want to pay. So just remember, it's important that you have this discussion, you talk about it, and then you celebrate when you figure out who's going to handle those finances. It will make your life a lot easier. So now's a good time to pause, have that discussion, and determine who's the saver, who's the spender. All right, so now you've probably had those discussions, or at least we hope you have, and determined who's going to handle the finances going forward. If you're going to split the task, that's great too. If you have decided that's what you're going to do, that's wonderful. But if you've picked one person to handle those, remember that's a lot of extra work for that one person, and you need to support them. So now let's go on to talk a little bit more about spending habits. It's time to sit down and make that plan and see what your spending habits are and how they compare to one another. So one person might like to stop at the coffee shop every single morning and get their coffee. Another person might like to play lottery. That's how my husband was. He liked to play the lottery a little bit too much, so we had to have that discussion too. So it's okay. Everybody has their little things they like to spend money on. I like shoes. So, have those discussions though, and determine how much you have extra to spend on those types of things and make sure it fits your plan. It's an important discussion to have. Also, we want to talk a little bit about credit card spending. Is there a time when credit card spending is necessary? Absolutely. We've all made mistakes on credit cards. I know we have in our life, and we needed to clean that up. But what's important is if you use a credit card, you set your plan right from the beginning. If you have an emergency and you need to use a credit card, a lot of times things like that come up in life. And just make sure that you sit down, make a plan as to when you're going to pay that amount off. Okay, it's okay to use it. Everybody has to once in a while. So just make your plan and make sure you agree on that plan. Another good discussion to have is how much money can I spend without having to talk with my partner? So I know that sounds a little funny, but it's the truth. So one thing we do in our life is we have separate debit cards, and we have an amount that's on the debit card. And if we go over that amount, we need to talk about it. So set that amount. There's things that come up, like let's say your tires need to be replaced. Those are expensive items. You need to talk about it and how you want to pay for those items, and whether it comes out of your savings or whether you put it on a credit card or you put it on your debit card. But you need to have that discussion as to what is that maximum amount that you can spend without having to discuss it. It's an important topic. It might not sound that important right now, but when you're going through your day-to-day life, it does become very important. So set that pace, whether it's $100, $250, or $500. But once you set that, then you know that you have the control over that amount of money before you have to talk to your partner and make sure it fits your plan. So sometimes we might feel a little limited based on these discussions, feeling like we can only spend so much money, or feeling that we're not able to do the things we want to do. But the important part to remember is once you have the limit that you can spend, or your allowance, let's say, and you've agreed on it, that gives you the financial freedom to make those decisions on your own and get the things that you feel are important to buy, or important things to spend your money on. So don't look at it as a problem. Look at it as a great way to manage your finances and feel like that's your freedom to make those choices. Now I'd like to go on to budgeting. It's important to talk about how you want to spend your money and how you can spend your money based on a budget. So in your budget, you need to talk about all of the things that you have to spend money on, like your utilities, your house payment, the things that are expenses for everyone. You need to list those expenses and determine how much money you have left over to spend on other things. You always want to include your savings, how much money you would like to include for charity, and other types of spending that come up on a regular basis. That is your budget. And once you determine a plan for your budget, you need to stick to it. Are you going to have times where you're not able to? Absolutely. But to have a plan and know that you got behind in your plan gives you a parameter of where to start and continue to be able to be successful in your plan. So you got to start somewhere. So let's start with planning your budget. So now let's talk about creating a budget for your household. It's so important to have a plan. Do we get off track on that plan? We do. But at least you have the parameters of what you want to spend and what you need to spend. And if you get off track, you can make a plan to rectify that. But what you need to include in your budget is your normal expenses that come along every month. First of all, you start with those. And then you always want to include savings, charity, and your extra spending money in groceries, of course. So when you plan your budget, is it difficult? Yes, it takes a little time, but it's well worth it when you put that plan into place and start following a budget plan. So now that you've set your budget, it's really important to have a schedule where you can review that budget. Whether it's on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, or a quarterly basis, it's important that you and your partner both know exactly where you're at on the budget. And if you need to make changes, you might have just paid off a recent bill that you can celebrate a little bit and you have a little extra money left. What are you going to do with that money? Are you going to put it in savings, or are you going to try to pay off another bill that you can use that extra money for? Whatever it is, it's important that you discuss it and make those changes together so that you both agree on what your plan is going to do with the next step. Now I'd like to talk to you about tithing. In the Bible, it refers to a tithe. A tithe is 10% of your gross income. Now, is there a really written rule other than in the Bible about what you should do? Not really, and the church doesn't follow up to make sure that you're doing that at any time, but we would like you to consider that because you need to be involved in your community. You need to help the church and the poor as it asks for us in the Bible. So consider that when you're thinking about your budget. It really does help you be in a stronger community and have a stronger relationship with God. So consider volunteering in your community. That is something that is so important. You need to learn how your community is growing or not growing and try to help to make that happen. There's a lot of people in our communities that need help and really don't know where to go for resources. If you volunteer, you can learn about your community, you can learn what's needed, and you can help others. And that strengthens your relationship and strengthens your life. So now might be a good time to start those discussions on the budget. Hit that pause button and make those discussions worthwhile. We also have a sample budget in the download packet that you can use if you're not already using a budget format. Welcome back. I hope you were able to set your budget or at least start that conversation. So now I'd like to talk to you about two types of savings, long-term savings and short-term savings. You need to be setting aside a little bit of money in each of those. And the reason why is for long-term savings, you're going to think about things that will happen possibly in the future. You're preparing yourself in case you need to use those funds. Otherwise, they just build as you go through the years. If you're doing short-term savings, you're looking at things you want to do soon, within the next year, maybe 2 years. And you can set your parameters on how you want to save that money and how much you want to put aside every month or every week. And you save for that item that you want to go out and get, like a new couch or a vacation. It's important that you set those parameters early and start early, even if it's a little bit at a time. Like I've said, you're not always going to be able to put a lot of money into savings. But if you just concentrate on putting at least a little bit in there, it will build and you can start celebrating your successes as you reach different plateaus of monies. Another dynamic savings adds to your marriage is the fact that you have peace of mind. You see that savings grow. You feel comfortable and you understand that you have built those savings together. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something. It builds your relationship and gives you, again, the peace of mind that you need to know that you can afford to do things that you want to do. Or if something should happen that you need to dive into your emergency funds, you have those long-term savings that can back you at that point. The next thing you need to think about in savings is your retirement. It is so important to start at a young age to save for your retirement, even if it's just a little bit at a time. Talk to a financial advisor. They can help you determine what would be a good starting point. They'll make you feel very comfortable about the decisions that you make and how they're going to help you in the future. Also, something that is extremely important is make sure you're looking over the plan with your employer and see if they match any funds. Make sure that you're taking full advantage of any matched funds because basically that's free money. It's something that I truly believe in, and I've done it my entire life. My husband and I are very, very focused on making sure that we're saving for our retirement and putting as much away in savings as we can. Were we able to at first? Probably not. But as we grew and we built our relationship, we were able to save more and more. And it's important because every plateau, even if it's small, makes you feel like you've accomplished something. So now's the time to hit that pause button and talk about what you believe in savings. What are your values? What did you learn as you grew in your life? What helps you determine how much money you should save? And who's got the better plan? Think about it. One might have a better plan than the other. You can learn from each other, you can make the plan together, and it can be a big part of your relationship. So take the time, hit the pause button, and make that plan. Welcome back. Throughout this segment, we've covered many things. We've covered savings, we've covered retirement, we've covered budgeting, we've covered putting a plan together. The most important part of all of this is that you communicate and you work together to build this relationship and build your financial strength. So congratulations. Believe it or not, you are heading toward a very fun time in your life. You will be able to work together to build something together and go forward. Make sure you're supporting one another and edifying each other. You can learn from one another. Make sure you're listening. It's so important. Congratulations and God bless.
Are you hearing the coffee brewing in your headphones?
Yeah, yep.